morning, everyone. It is 10:21 on Friday, August 7th, 2020. My name is Father Bob Gross, and welcome to my office. We're continuing our series on adulting in the Catholic Church. And today, what I want to talk about is getting married. Yesterday, we talked about the different vocations within the church, but like we said in that video, most people seek and desire to be married. And I want to talk about how special that is in the Catholic Church and being very clear about what our church teaches about marriage, because we don't want to have difficulties in the future that I've experienced in my own ministry as a priest. So, first things first. We as Catholics believe that marriage is one of the 7 sacraments that Christ himself instituted. Our church teaches that at the wedding feast of Cana, when Christ turned the water into wine, it was at that moment that Christ raised marriage to the dignity of a sacrament. And it became the sacrament that shows the relationship between Christ and his church. How Christ loves the church and the church loves Christ in return. And that's what marriage is to be about, is to mirror that. So, think about this term. You want to have your child baptized. Many times it's a deep desire that people want to have their children baptized. Sometimes they can't articulate the reasons why, but whether you're practicing Catholic or not, whether you're going to Mass or not, there's this importance within people's minds and hearts to get their children baptized. It's really important for second graders to receive First Holy Communion. I mean, it's a major moment in a Catholic's life. We remember it. It's one of the first times that we get dressed up for a formal event. We have a party, all that is surrounding that. It's a major deal to get confirmed. We believe getting married in the church is equal to those 3 celebrations. And that's why it's an obligation on Catholics to seek the sacrament of marriage within the Catholic Church. So every baptized Catholic, by virtue of being Catholic, by virtue of being a member of the church, by virtue of having the privilege of the sacraments, also has the responsibility to get married in the church. And what has started to happen is that people will get baptized, they will get confirmed, they will have their first communion, but then there's a sense from society that they're going to get married where they always wanted to get married, and a lot of people choose to get married outside the church. Well, there's consequences to getting married outside the church. And that makes it awkward for a couple later when they want to present their child for baptism, because people are not told clearly that every Catholic is obliged to get married in the church. And if you are going to get married outside of the Catholic Church, you as a member of the church need permission to get married outside of that church so that the church recognizes your marriage as sacramental. I mean, that's how you live a lifelong commitment, is the grace of Christ. If you don't have the grace of Christ, it's even harder to live a lifelong commitment. And many times you can't live a lifelong commitment because our love is imperfect. And Christ's love perfects our love in the sacrament of marriage. So that's the first thing I want to state. Every Catholic is obliged, if they seek marriage, to get married in the Catholic Church, to make their vows in front of a Catholic priest or a Catholic deacon. Okay. But let's say that you fall in love with someone who isn't Catholic and you want to marry them. Let's say they want to get married in their church. Can you do that? And the answer is yes. If you are free to marry, and you seek to get married in another church, if you seek permission, the Catholic Church grants permission to those Catholics to get married. So let's do the classic example in this area. If you're a Catholic and you fall in love with a Lutheran, and the Lutheran party wants to have the wedding at the Lutheran Church, the Catholic party has to do two things. He has to approach his pastor and seek permission to get married in the Lutheran Church. And number two, he has to make a promise that he or she will do everything in their power to raise their children as Catholic. So part of the marriage preparation that is present is, how are you going to raise your children in the faith when there are two faith traditions? It is an extra challenge. There are sociological studies that have shown that. So that's what is present there. So, getting married, beautiful. There's privileges in getting married, but there's responsibilities as well. So you have a responsibility to the church that you belong to. And if you're Catholic, you have to follow what the church asks of us. It's called obedience. And that's one of the differences between Catholics and Protestants. Protestants celebrate marriage. They call marriage holy. In many ways, we believe similarly in what marriage is, but they do not see it as a sacrament. They only have two sacraments. Going all the way back to the Protestant Reformation, goes down to two for them, baptism and Eucharist. But we as Catholics have always believed that Jesus instituted 7 sacraments, and one of them is marriage. Okay, so let's say you fall in love and you want to get married. What do? You call your pastor. The first phone call after engagement is your parents and your family. The second phone call is to call your priest, your pastor, and to tell them about the story of your engagement and the joy of wanting to get married, and then talk about your situation, about how you want to celebrate your marriage. You don't call the reception hall first. You don't call the photographer first. You don't plan your honeymoon first. You plan with the church first. So you make an appointment, and the priest will determine whether you're free to marry. Have to be free, which means you can't be in a prior bond, a prior marriage. You have to be free of certain impediments that are present sometimes. You have to be free of those things in order to be married. So that's why the first meeting with the priest, the couple meets with the priest, and the priest determines that. When you are free to marry, when that's determined, then you're allowed to find your date. Don't expect to find your date for a wedding on the phone. The priest needs to meet with you. Then, after that setting of the date, is the most important part of getting married in the church, and that is the preparation that you have for marriage. Every couple in the Catholic Church must do marriage preparation at least 6 months before you make vows before the Lord. And the main reason for that is to increase 2 realities in your life. The first is freedom. The more that you are free from sin and attachments and false notions about marriage, the more you can then enter into the reality of marriage that you're saying yes to. The second reality that you increase is knowledge. Knowledge of God and knowledge of one another. The very moment that a couple becomes engaged is the moment that that relationship changes significantly, because you are making permanent plans with that other person. And there has to be a process where you talk with the priest, with an engaged encounter retreat or a pre-Cana retreat, or a sponsor couple, having those series of conversations in which you're able to talk about the reality of marriage so that you know what you're saying yes to. Because that's what makes marriage. What makes marriage is the man and woman consenting to the reality of marriage. I choose this, and I choose this for life. And we have to speak about that to make sure that the mind and heart is ready for such a lifelong commitment. Actually, that's one of the favorite things I have as a priest, is meeting couples and talking about marriage and talking about life, because let's face it, most people live at a superficial level. Why? What am I going to do today? How is work today? We rarely speak about that deeper aspects of life, of what really moves the heart and moves the mind and the motivations for why we do what we do. Marriage preparation helps unfold those realities for the couple. Then you see the order. Marriage is I do, then baptism is we do. In a certain sense, you need marriage to be a parent. Actually, it's not in a certain sense, it is the truth. You need marriage to be a parent. You need the solidity and the permanence of marriage so that you can give your life and serve the children that God will bless you with. And then that opens up your family to a new experience of the church. From being a single person in the church to being a married person in the church, and then bringing your children to the waters of baptism. That's how God increases his number in the church, is through families and through children. So family and marriage is the service to divine love and life. That's what makes marriage so attractive. It's helping your spouse to heaven by sacrificially loving them as Jesus did. And it's by being open to life and bringing children in the world that we enrich the world and make it more beautiful. Every child in this world makes the world more beautiful, but that child who comes into the world has a right to have a mother and a father in commitment. So that's why the church feels so strongly about the sanctity and the goodness of marriage. That's why the church then says we have some concerns about some behaviors that happen in society. For example, cohabitation, living before you get married. The church teaches that is wrong because you need to be in a commitment to have the privilege of living together. And you're stating that there's a reality present in your life that in fact is not true yet. You have not exchanged vows with one another. At any moment when you're living together, it could end and end badly. And there could be an introduction of instability for the life of a family without the commitment of marriage. That's why the church is against premarital sexual activity, because sexual intimacy is a privilege of marriage. You're able to share that which is most sacred because you are safe and secure in the commitment of giving yourself to each other in marriage. There's such a fear of commitment, of whether this is going to work out, that in a certain sense we want to have a test drive of marriage. And I get that by young people. I get it. I understand it. I understand the economic reasons why sometimes couples live together before they get married. But what about God's reasons? What about obedience? What about trusting in his ways that leads to greater blessings and goodness? Getting married is a really big deal. And the church loves marriage, but the church also sees the importance and the seriousness of marriage. And the church has really a call to help couples to kind of figure that out. So becoming an adult in the church and adulting in the church, these are the aspects of what it means to get married. Okay? Marriage is an obligation to receive the sacrament in the Catholic Church. Number 2, if you marry someone who's not Catholic, you are more than welcome to marry that person, but you have to get permission from the church. It's because you're a member of this church. Number 3, you need to meet with the priest right away to determine how you want marriage to unfold. Number 4, you need marriage preparation to prepare your mind and your heart for the commitment of marriage. And then, and only then, can we celebrate the day of your wedding. Because there's blessings, but there's also responsibilities. And lastly, marriage is the service of divine love and the service to life that makes the world more beautiful. Okay, that's what I want to share about adulting in the church, getting married, part 5. Our next section will be how do you get a baby baptized? We'll talk about that next time. and may God bless you.